The good news is we're all in this together. And when we see we're together, we can work things out. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. This is the 277th edition of Energy Week. We're counting. I don't know where we're getting. I mean, there's no end in sight. But nevertheless, every day I go to the internet and I spend a couple of hours looking at news relating to energy and climate change. And when I find pieces of news that I think are of interest, I do a synopsis of the article, provide the name of the source and a link to the source. I put together 10 to 15 of these every day with photographs for a lot of them, and make that group into a single post for my blog, geoharvey.com. You can go to geoharvey.com. We will try to keep you apprised of the dates that we're working from. We are starting this show on Thursday, August the 9th, today being the day that we're recording, being Thursday, August the 16th. So we went from a week ago today till yesterday.
A little lag there.
A little lag, yeah. Tom has got to have time to read the articles that I post in the morning, so we don't make him talk about those the day they appear.
Well, some of these articles are really good articles and in depth. I mean, we could spend the whole show talking about some of them.
Yes.
So what we're going to have to do in order to have a show is if there's some of these really compelling, we'll try to mention them, and you look them up yourself because some are really worth looking up.
You go to geoharvey.com, which is the name of the blog, and you can click on the date in the calendar, and it'll take you to the 10 to 15 articles for that day, and look through those for the article that we have. Should we start right in?
Yeah, might as well start.
Okay, we actually start with a photograph, and this is an item from Quartz.
Quartz, like in quartz. Quartz and pints and stuff like that, right?
No, I think this is more like
more
sand.
like a rock.
Yeah.
Yeah. This is a very interesting statement. You probably have no idea just how much water is needed to produce electricity.
And it's really apropos right now. It is really important. It's getting important. Despite the growth of renewable energy, most electricity is still generated by fossil fuel or nuclear fuel. The trouble is that thermal electric generation, a category that includes coal, natural gas, and nuclear power, does not just require fuel, but also a lot of water.
Well, they're not using the water up, they're borrowing it.
Yeah.
They dump it back into the streams. But that tends to raise the water level, or the water temperature in the stream.
Yes.
Which threatens the fish.
Yes.
And as we may or may not be mentioning this week, some places they've had to curtail growth or generation of electricity to avoid killing the fish.
Well, not only to avoid killing the fish, in some places there were 4 nuclear plants in France and 4 nuclear plants in Finland last week.
They had to shut down themselves.
They had to shut down or at least curtail.
They couldn't cool the water
because
was so
they couldn't
hot.
cool themselves.
Wow.
So, you know, this is a problem with climate change. You cannot address climate change with just nuclear power because
any kind of thermally generated electricity we're talking about. We're not talking about wind or solar here.
Yeah. It does include geothermal. And of course, in a drought, you've got problems with hydropower.
Yeah, you do.
So,
absolutely.
You know, these are things that we have to balance. And that picture.
I'll get the picture up again.
Yeah. Okay. That picture is a picture of what is called a thermal power plant. The big cooling towers that are there that look like chimneys, but fat chimneys, are not. They're very, very tall. They're probably 10 or 15 stories tall. And what looks like smoke coming up is not smoke, it's just steam.
Yep.
But in the background you can see a nuclear reactor, and that is a nuclear power plant, I believe, in France. I'm not 100% sure.
I can't read it. Let's
it doesn't say. It doesn't say on it.
No, it doesn't say. Cooling towers of a thermal plant.
But as I said, I think that's in France. Anyway, we should probably go on.
Move on to the next one.
Our next item is from Common Dreams.
Now, this is a goodie. This is a portent of things to come.
Yes.
Solar with storage surges as gas falls.
It's fascinating to watch this unfold. Solar with storage projects are surging in many states by beating gas plants on both economics and reliability. By 2026...
Now that's significant.
It is, yeah.
1-2 punch.
It's a 1-2 punch. By 2026, the U.S. is expected to add storage capacity equal to 35 nuclear plants, generating $4 billion a year in savings. Some big utilities are already replacing gas facilities with batteries.
Well, the takeaway here is economical storage is surging in the marketplace.
Yeah.
While fracked naturals in quotes, gas has begun to decline.
Yes.
You know, gas is even worse than coal for the climate because much of it leaks unburned into the air.
Yep. And we actually saw, I think a lot of people don't realize it, but we actually saw a decline in electricity generated from gas last year of 7.5%.
We'll be talking about that.
Yeah, we have. Yep. Should we go on?
Yeah, might as well.
Okay. We're up to our third item, and this is from Green Tech Media.
U.S. wind industry full steam ahead, despite a wind catcher cancellation.
And we do
this is a good article. It's a long and informative article.
Yep, we have a photograph for this.
We do, don't we?
It's American Wind Week, and the U.S. wind industry has a lot to celebrate. Wind power has become the country's largest source of renewable energy capacity. In doing that, it overtook hydro. Today, the industry employs more than 105,000 U.S. workers and is building more power than ever before. And you know, this is wind people talking about how wonderful wind power is.
Yeah.
And they are being caught up with by solar power fast.
Absolutely true.
Yeah.
Absolutely true. The article talks about the wind catcher.
Yes.
But we don't know what it is.
Well, wind catcher was a huge project. It was going to be the largest wind farm in the United States.
In America, yep.
And it was nixed. It was stopped.
Well, it was the generation part of it, but there was also a massive transmission line.
Yes, that's right.
I mean, massive, like 300 miles.
Yeah.
So it apparently was not economically viable after all was said and done.
Well, there was I forget which
there was a lot of opposition.
There was a lot of opposition, and I forget which policy board it was that decided to put it down, but there was a policy decision that was, and honestly, I don't remember what that was. I think it might have been that the transmission line was.
It just says utility regulators.
Okay.
The wind catcher didn't offer enough benefits to taxpayers.
Right.
So it's a regulatory agency.
Right. It offered benefits to investors, but not taxpayers.
Yep.
Well, what do you know? Okay, we are up to Friday, August 10th, and we've got an item from Green Tech Media.
U.S. renewables are closing in on nuclear generation.
The U.S. nuclear industry has...
There's a picture for this one, too, isn't there?
No, it's the next one.
That's the next one, yeah, the picture's...
U.S. nuclear industry has been stalled for decades. Now cheap wind and solar deployments are taking a lead over it. In the first 5 months of 2018, excuse me, renewables produced 20.17% of U.S. electricity, and nuclear power produced 20.14%, according to data from the Energy Information Administration.
So renewables just edged over nuclear.
Just edged over nuclear.
But nuclear is expensive to run.
Yep.
They're closing them down.
Yep.
And as it says here, nuclear's prominence keeps eroding.
Yes.
Okay, and they also a takeaway here. You don't hear much about it. Environmental groups have long taken aim at the radioactive waste and perceived risks of nuclear power plants.
Well, I think that's worth mentioning.
Oh, certainly. It's a part of the equation.
It's part of the equation.
It happened here in Yankee, at least as far as the perceived risks.
The perceived risks people were objecting to, and
nobody was talking much about the radioactive waste, which, by the way, is in the news right now because they just finished wrapping it up into
dry cask storage.
Casks.
Yeah,
which are going to stay there.
Yeah, they will for a long time. That's important because in a spent fuel pool, if the spent fuel pool suddenly empties of water,
bingo, you're in trouble.
You are in desperate trouble because the cladding on the fuel rods burns, and it will get hot enough to ignite. And once that happens,
you can't put it out.
You can't put that fire out. It's one of those things where, well, there was a British frigate that was hit by an Exocet missile during the Falkland Islands War.
Okay.
And the missile set the internal structures of that frigate on fire. Well, the bulkheads were made of aluminum.
Wow.
And when that aluminum caught fire, there was no way to put the fire out.
Yeah.
Because if you put water on it, it's so hot. It dissociates the water.
You get hydrogen.
You get hydrogen and oxygen. The oxygen fuels that fire, and the hydrogen goes off and burns elsewhere. And the ship sank because of that. And of course, the British had to figure out what to do with a whole bunch of frigates that had aluminum bulkheads. Paint them. Good idea.
Paint them copper.
Right. But what's happening here is wind power is being installed. Solar power, actually, half of the capacity installed in the United States so far this year has been solar power, which I thought was just stunning.
Well, we're going to be talking about more of that this time, but solar is going to be king.
Yep.
It's going to be king.
And in the meantime, September is going to see the Oyster Creek nuclear power plant close.
Okay.
And at this point, there's no way the Trump administration could keep that open. I mean, they'd have to override all kinds of authority that's invested in various organizations to keep it open. And the Oyster Creek plant is kind of a problem anyway, because when Hurricane Sandy hit New Jersey, the seawall at Oyster Creek was within an inch or two of being breached.
Ooh.
And
not good.
Not good. But the spent fuel at the Vermont Yankee plant has been removed from the spent fuel pool.
Yes.
And it has gone into dry cask storage,
which are safer.
And the dry cask storage is relatively safe. The only thing is, sometime in the next, I don't know, few decades, we have to figure out what to do with
like 50, 60 years, isn't it?
Something like that. People have been talking about 100 years. I don't like that idea. But should we go on?
Yeah, I think we should.
Okay,
we've got another picture coming up.
We do indeed. And we have an item here from KBIA, which
sounds like a radio station.
Sounds like a radio station.
Missouri's clean energy industry is growing, but some employers say hiring is not easy.
Yeah.
Interesting.
There was one which I didn't put up here, but it came the next day, and it said basically the exact same thing, but it wasn't Missouri, it was Indiana. Clean energy companies in Missouri are finding it difficult to hire qualified workers, even as the number of residents in the state working in energy efficiency, electric transportation, and renewable energy grows. The shortage of job seekers could take its toll on the industry. And I sent out I posted the blog and sent out the daily email and such what, and I got very quickly got a response from a person who follows that blog in New Mexico.
Okay.
And she is a union organizer for the coal industry.
Oh.
And her job, as she sees it, is to get good jobs for the coal miners and coal.
As they lose their jobs.
As they lose their jobs. And they're very resistant to this idea. They're hoping they aren't going to lose their jobs.
Well, human nature.
Yeah. And so she was very excited about this and said, where can I get more information? And I said, you can go to almost any state in the country. But the thing that I turned her to was Jessica Kilroy, the blonde chick, in her own words, who went up on the wind turbines down in,
yeah.
And the Weather Channel ran a really neat video on Jessica Kilroy, who she goes way up in the wind turbines and dangles on ropes down to repair the blades. And well, she flies all over the United States.
Does she really?
She lives in Montana, and she was working in Massachusetts. And when I saw that, I did a double, a kind of a double check on what's going on.
Should have had her on a show.
I'd love to. Not only that, but she's a musician and she sings well. So
after we talk about hanging from a rope, we could have her serenade.
Hand her a guitar, right? The wind energy technicians, the guys who go up and do her job.
Yeah.
Who or on a weekly basis, they just climb each tower every week and go in and lubricate, double check, make sure things are running. I mean, these are multi-million-dollar machines. If they're down, it's a problem.
These guys are well paid.
They're well paid. And what I found was that over 50% of all of the wind technicians in Massachusetts had been on the job for less than a year.
No kidding.
And the median pay was $52,000, which meant that there were wind turbine technicians who had been on the job for less than a year,
making 50 grand,
making over $50,000 a year. And I've just got an image up here in this thing that, this thing is being silly. There we go.
Well, that's coming up soon. The problem in this particular case is training.
It's training.
These people need to be highly trained,
yes,
and the training isn't as readily available as it should be.
Although, another thing that I've read about, and this relates to solar installations, a woman I read about had just got out of prison. She had serious difficulty getting a job. She wanted to function well in society and needed a job, and she was offered free training, I think, by the state of California. And she started a job that was like more than double the highest pay she ever anticipated getting. And all of a sudden, she was making a living, a respectable income. Yeah. And so she started getting her relatives into the solar installation business. So anyway.
Let us move on.
Okie dokie.
We've got another picture coming up here.
Not yet. Our next thing is South EU Summit. That's the name of the publication.
Oh, okay. I have a picture, but...
you have a picture.
But you don't have a picture.
I don't have a picture.
Portugal announces extensive solar power plans during record-breaking heat wave. So it's happening over there, too.
Not just too, it's happening over there really badly.
It is, yeah.
After getting 103% of its national electricity needs in March from renewables, the country of Portugal proved that it is indeed becoming a green energy leader. Hydro supplies 55% of Portugal's renewable energy, and 42% comes from wind. Now it's starting to install solar power. And the temperatures in Portugal were getting up above 117 degrees Fahrenheit.
I don't like it that hot.
No, it's not comfortable.
The picture I mentioned, is too bad we can't bring it up here.
Yeah.
Came from the article.
Yeah.
It's a picture of a castle.
Yes.
And obviously, by the shape of the castle, people live in it.
Yes.
And there's a whole bunch of solar panels on the roof.
I should have picked that and put it in.
Portugal has been making headlines for recent extreme temperatures and subsequent wildfires.
Yes.
So they're not just happening in California.
Oh, they're happening all over the place.
We'll be talking about Canada,
yep,
which you don't hear about.
Yeah.
And it's happening in Europe.
Yes, it is.
It's happening all over the world.
It's happening all over the world. In fact, right now, Australia is in a terrible drought.
It always is.
But it's winter.
Yeah, that's right. It's winter down there.
Yeah,
right.
And they're freaking out down in Australia because they're having this horrible drought. I think it's the state of Victoria. The whole state is in drought, 100% of the state.
But it's a hoax. How can they?
Yeah.
Well, there's a takeaway from this one, and it's a quickie.
Yeah.
All of Portugal will be able to run on renewable energy by 2040.
Okay, that includes transportation.
That's what it's saying.
Yep.
That's what it's saying.
A lot of times people say 100% of energy will be renewable, and when you really look closely at what they're talking about, they mean 100% of
Well, by 2040, there's going to be a lot more electric cars than there are.
Yeah, and what this is saying is that Portugal is actually, in March, it produced 103% of what it needed for electricity out of renewable power.
Yeah, it did.
So it's already got there. Okay, should we go on?
I think we should.
We're up to Saturday, August 11th, and we've got a picture of a very weird thing
What
here.
is this thing?
Well, it's actually a flying saucer which has been disguised. These are extraterrestrials who have had these things strapped on, so the people down in Washington, D.C. can say, no, we don't have any extraterrestrials. They're just, you know, what can I say?
That thing that we're looking at is called a black fly.
And it's not an extraterrestrial. I was just kidding.
It's a personal mobility vehicle.
Yep.
Which is now fully qualified as an ultralight air mobility vehicle, which means it's a fun device which needs no special pilot's license.
Right.
So you can buy one of these things, take it out to the parking lot.
You can buy it. I can't buy it. Not me. I don't have that kind of money.
The article is very interesting because there's some really cool pictures of this black fly and some other
a whole bunch of pictures. What do you have for a title on this? Aha.
Electric flight dominates air mobility news at the 2018 International EAA Air Venture event. And the EAA is the Experimental Aircraft Association.
And that's in Oshkosh, Bagosh.
It is, Bagosh.
Okay. This year's 2018 EAA Air Venture Oshkosh will be well worth the travel to get there, as it is aimed to show a cleaner picture of our near future mobility. Electric vertical takeoff and landing aircraft, air taxis, and electric planes are getting popular. This is an article.
I'm going to pull it up again.
Huh?
What a weird looking plane.
Yeah.
And the other ones are weirder.
The other ones, some of them are. This is from Clean Technica, and yeah, there's a. I mean, this is
it's a good article if you're into this, because they got some interesting pictures.
Yeah.
Of these vehicles.
Yeah, this is a one-person vehicle, as I recall, and it has 8 engines, or 8 motors, I should say.
Okay.
And
they're all electric.
They're all electric. Yep.
Amazing.
Okay, our next item is from Minnesota Public Radio News.
Yeah, we don't have a picture here.
No, we don't. This is back to what we were talking about a few minutes ago.
Well, it's from Minnesota, so it's about Minnesota, but it's really about much more than in Minnesota.
Yep.
Smoke alert. Thick plume triggers weekend air alert for all of Minnesota.
A huge smoke plume is pushing across Minnesota. Rising from wildfires in western Canada, it covers much of North America. We may not be able to blame climate change for an individual smoke event, but we can blame it for their increased frequency, and that is something I think is really important.
Well, I was surprised at this article because it includes a map.
Yes.
And on the map is a dot for every wildfire that's burning in the U.S. and Canada. And there's a lot of them burning in Canada, much more than California.
Oh, yeah.
We don't hear anything about it.
And this has been going on for years. There was that horrible fire that they had up in Canada 2 years ago. And
yeah, there was a biggie. We heard about that.
Fort, what's the name of that?
I don't remember.
Fort something or other.
Yeah.
It was in a city called Fort something or other.
Yeah.
That's right.
Well, this map that I just mentioned, it shows you the plume.
Yes.
And it's covering 2/3 of Canada.
Yes.
2/3 of Canada.
Yes.
And extending in the U.S. almost to St. Louis and Chicago.
And
it's covering Denver.
That is the plume at a certain density. If you were to go out and measure particulates in the air in Brattleboro, Vermont right now, you'd find them here.
There's some here now.
And as you mentioned before the show, you could probably find them in London. You know.
I'm sure.
Yeah.
Yep. But this is the noticeable plume.
Yes.
And the article shows that all of Minnesota is in trouble.
Yes. Yes.
All of it.
Well,
and as you mentioned, what is Washington State?
Washington State, the whole state has got an air alert.
Yep.
Right now. Okay, move on.
Yeah, let's move along.
Our next item is from the New York Post.
The New York, interesting. I delivered the New York Post when I was in grade school. And everybody used to call it the red rag. It was so liberal.
Yeah.
And now it's very conservative.
Yeah.
Same paper.
Yeah.
At America First Energy Conference, solar power is dumb and climate change is fake. Okay, New York Post.
Messages from the America First Energy Conference included that pumping out carbon dioxide makes the planet greener. The UN puts out fake science about climate change to control the global energy market, and wind and solar energy are simply dumb.
Well, this was kind of a fun article. The conference was organized by the Heartland Institute.
Of course.
And the Heartland Institute is controlled by, guess who?
Let me guess. Jerry Brown.
Wrong. The Koch brothers.
The Koch brothers.
The Koch brothers.
I knew that, actually.
And these guys were all nuts at that thing. Some of the things they were talking about: carbon taxes, cap and trade, and other bad ideas. Yes. Fiduciary malpractice, the sustainable investment movement, and why CO2 emissions are not creating a climate crisis.
Well, this is a group of people who've got their heads buried in the sand. And
the reason much so.
The reason they do is because somebody is paying them to have their heads buried in the sand.
I would think. Yeah.
And it isn't working because the climate change is so clearly obvious. It's right in front of us. You have to have your head buried in the sand to avoid seeing it. So that's why they have to pay people to avoid seeing it, because
some of them are probably ideological, but the majority of them are simply paid shields.
This happened, I believe, in New Orleans, didn't it?
Yes, it did.
Now,
which is a town that's losing ground to encroachment by the ocean.
We've mentioned this a number of times on the show. The county that had the heaviest pro-Trump vote in
western Louisiana
was in southwestern corner of Louisiana.
Yep.
It was Cameron Parish.
Yep, absolutely.
It was over 80% pro-Trump.
Okay.
And the people in that have been told by this Republican conservative state government that they're going to have to evacuate permanently because of ocean level rise.
Yeah.
Well, also because the land is subsiding because all the oil is being pumped out from under it.
So the land is going.
And it's like
1-2 punch.
It's a 1-2 punch, and there are already towns along the coast of Louisiana that have relocated, where the entire community just gets up and relocates inland.
Yeah.
But how long can you keep doing that?
I read an article about a guy he has moved 3 times now. He moves out of the place that's in trouble.
Yeah.
He moves 20 miles north. 5 years later, it's in trouble again, and he's moved 3 times.
Yeah.
Why does he move to Arkansas? Well, Arkansas is in trouble too, I guess.
I remember
Wyoming.
Actually, during the Clinton administration, this is a long time ago, or a relatively long time ago, somebody saying, wait a minute, we've had 300-year floods in the last 5 years.
Yeah.
And because, they had those horrible floods that my daughter was traveling west on a train during those floods. I guess this was, it was in the 1990s. And she said that they went into an area of, I think it was the Missouri River. I think it may have been the Mississippi. It would make better sense. Mm-hmm. And the train traveled for an hour and a half with floodwaters on both sides, stretching out across the land.
Wow.
And
that's scary.
Isn't it?
The train could have been derailed.
Well, the train wasn't in the floodwaters because the tracks were elevated, but this is, and
well, we have seen, right on this show, we've talked about a train being derailed by water.
We have, yeah. Okay. We are up to Sunday, August 12th, and we have a slide here, and another plane. And
this is interesting, too. Look at that plane.
Yeah.
Can't see me.
That's right. It's from Clean Technica.
Yeah. Put me up. I'm doing this. That's an interesting plane. It's called the Airbus Zephyr. Solar-powered plane, sets a new record, stays aloft for 26 days. Well, 3 minutes less than 26 days.
I think we'll allow that.
That must have been a mistake. Why 3 minutes?
Well, they landed
25 days, 23 hours, and 57 minutes.
Well, they landed it when it came time to land, I guess.
Yeah,
they would have liked to keep it up for an extra 3 minutes, but it just didn't happen. An Airbus Zephyr S solar-powered plane took off from Arizona on the 11th of July and stayed aloft for 25 days, 23 minutes and 57 minutes. The plane has a wingspan of 82 feet and weighs a feather-light 165 pounds.
I'm less than that.
Yeah.
Not by much, but...
Its two propellers were powered by solar panels and batteries. This was unmanned.
Let's get that picture up. I was just going to say that.
It's a robotic plane, but it just sat there in the air, for all this time.
That's the market for this plane. It's going to go up there, and it's just going to stay up there indefinitely, doing whatever it's supposed to do.
Right.
The article mentioned it's almost a satellite.
Almost a satellite. And you know what they'll do? They'll put this up in the air, and it'll take pictures of the ground so that they can locate all the people who are growing grass who are not licensed to do so, because,
Well, that's a possibility.
And then they'll come around and slap a $10 fine on everybody. They will have reasons for doing this. And
once fully developed, the Zephyr is expected to remain aloft for months at a time.
Yeah.
It flies above the weather and above commercial aircraft at 70,000 feet.
That's well above commercial aircraft.
It just goes up there and it stays there.
Pardon me. Okay, our next item is from Newsweek, and this is not a joke.
Black widow spiders are heading north due to climate change.
As the climate warms, black widow spiders are moving north. Canadian researchers publishing a report said that over the last 60 years in the northernmost point, black widow spiders live in the northernmost point where black widow spiders live has moved north into southern Canada, and they're pretty sure this is because of climate change.
Well, everybody's heard of black widows, I'm sure. But the venom is extremely powerful.
Yes, it is.
And this little thing can kill you.
Well,
not likely to, but it can.
Yeah, not likely to. I knew a woman who was bit by a black widow spider in New Jersey, and I actually saw a black widow spider on a bale of hay in New Jersey.
In New Jersey, yeah. New Jersey. I looked at the map, and it doesn't appear that they are in Vermont yet.
Well, they
possibility over by Bennington.
Yeah.
But they're, for the most part, to the west. They're in New York, they're in New Jersey, then they're in southern Canada, like Toronto area.
Yeah, and they will move into the rest of Vermont in time.
I think it's inevitable.
Yeah. Okay, our next item is from the Times of San Diego, and we have
got another picture coming up
here.
There is a plume there.
Yeah, there is a plume.
That's not a cloud, guys.
That's not a cloud, and it's not steam.
California climate goals may go up in smoke because of recent wildfires. Is that a pun?
Maybe it is. California blazes are spewing enough carbon into the air to undo some of the good done by the state's climate policies. What is even worse is that climate warming compounds will continue to be released by the charred forests long after the fires are extinguished.
That's the scary part. You don't even think about that.
Well, they said that only something like 13%.
15, they call
15.
it. Yeah.
Okay, 15% of the climate-changing compounds that are released
during the fire,
from a fire, are released after the fire is put out.
Well, 15%.
15 are released during the fire.
Bingo.
The rest are released after. 85% are released. And
if there's a second fire over that, it's a total disaster.
Yeah.
Because the fire feeds on this burnt wood.
Yes.
And it releases this stuff like instantly.
Yeah. People don't understand fires very well. I remember when I was a kid, there was a local house that caught fire, and the fire was put out by the fire department, and I think it was about a year later, a fire mysteriously appeared about 150 yards away. And I forget what it burned. I think it just came up in the middle of a farm field.
Wow.
And the reason was...
it was burning underground.
It had gone underground and traveled a little bit.
Well, there's fires burning underground, like in Pennsylvania. They can't put them out.
I think it's called Carbondale, Pennsylvania.
I think you're right.
Was evacuated from a fire that started in the 1960s at the town dump, went underground and has been burning ever since. And the
there's coal under there.
Yeah, and the levels of carbon monoxide in the atmosphere are above safe limits, so they had to evacuate the town.
Evacuated the whole town.
The town has been evacuated for over 50 years,
wow.
over 60 years. Okay, we're up to Monday, August 13th, and we have an item from PV Magazine International.
China sets up International Investment Alliance for Renewable Energy.
Although the Chinese government has recently scaled back solar development in China, it has created a new large alliance to reach more foreign markets. In addition to focusing on shipment of PV modules, it will also address financing, engineering, procurement, and what's the EPC? It's commissioning and O&M services. Construction
yep.
and O&M services. I keep missing that.
And O&M is operations and maintenance.
Right. And now what China is doing here is they are moving into commercial markets that the United States could be in if it were encouraged to do so by a government that didn't believe that this is all a hoax.
Bingo.
And you know, this is really, the Chinese are extending a level of global control that is, I think, unprecedented, aside from the kind of colonial control that was being exercised by the British and the French during the 18th and 19th centuries.
That's a good analogy.
They're working all over the world. They're working
absolutely.
Right off our shores. They're moving
absolutely.
into Central America. They're moving into Latin America. They're moving into Africa. And the people of for example, in Africa, are really very likely to benefit materially from an association with China. Because
that's interesting, isn't
because
it?
the Chinese are giving them things that are, well, I read an article about a guy who said these little solar panels, you know, that big, they're putting them on rooftops. And he said, wow, we've got electricity. We can run a mill to grind grain. And that means that my wife doesn't have to walk miles to have the corn I grow milled.
Mm-hmm.
And
you don't even think about stuff like that.
You know,
it's changing their lifestyle.
It's changing their lifestyle. And the thing that we don't think about, we have a power outage that lasts a couple of days. It's a disaster.
Mm-hmm.
The thing that most people don't think about is if you have a power outage in the middle of the night, the difference between having a flashlight and not having a flashlight is huge.
Mm-hmm.
If you have an extended power outage, the difference between having a battery or a generator and none is huge. And these people are living on maybe a 50th of the amount of electricity that we have around here, but the difference between their lifestyle without that electricity and that lifestyle with it is huge.
Very, very big. One of the biggest things, and it's earth-changing, really. These people all now have cell phones.
Yes.
I mean, you know, it's not like we got cell phones where people are just playing with them all day long.
Yeah.
These people really use them for virtually everything.
Yeah.
In their lives. I
Yeah.
mean, the cell phone is their bank.
And the cell phone requires electricity.
Bingo.
Needs to be charged. The cell phone tower requires electricity to work.
Yep.
So the company that is selling them the cell phone service needs to invest in electricity locally. And there are a bunch of villages in India, particularly, where cell phone companies electrified the village because they wanted the business.
They've done it, yeah.
Yeah.
They're bringing these people from the Stone Age to the 22nd
Absolutely.
century.
Yep. Okay, should we go on?
Yeah, we got a nice picture here.
We have a picture here. This is from Hamodia.com.
Yeah, let me get that picture.
And I have no idea what a Hamodian is. Hamodia is. A
I don't-
Hamodian sounds like a musical instrument, but
I don't know, but I can tell you what's happening in that picture.
yes.
That's what they call a continuous miner.
Yep.
And what you're looking at is about the size of a football field.
Yep.
And that thing that looks like a cylinder on the right is not a cylinder. It's a big claw that's clawing away at the wall, and it's rotating.
Yeah.
Okay, and it's chopping coal off the wall, which is dropping into a conveyor belt underneath it.
Yes.
It's going to go the whole length of that gallery, and then they're going to adjust it to the next level of coal, and it's going to come back, and it just does this all day long.
And it requires a couple of guys to run it as opposed to dozens of miners.
Well, yes, it does. The guy that's in that picture isn't running it. I don't know what he's even doing there because the guy who's running it is in the machine.
Well, I think I know what this guy is doing. He's posing for a photograph.
That's probably right.
Yeah.
But these have certainly revolutionized mining underground in many parts of the country where they work. They don't work in every mine.
Yeah. We have to move on, Tom. We've don't have
many hoped for rebound in Kentucky coal jobs under Trump. It has not happened.
The number of coal jobs edged downward in Kentucky between April and the end of June, illustrating the continued struggles of the industry has faced despite Donald Trump's campaign to promise to put coal miners back to work. It's not happening. And the coal burning power plants are closing down. Over half of them have closed now.
Well, it's not renewables that's doing it. It's natural gas.
Well, it's at this point, Tom. I think it's renewables. I think it really is.
They're coming around
because the renewables are now taking a bite out of natural gas. Natural gas output
is
declining.
they are.
Okay, our next item is from commercial real estate news.
5-fold growth in solar panels on Australian commercial buildings.
A perfect storm, that perfect storm in quotes, of rising energy prices, improved technology, and cheaper prices has led to a 5-fold increase in the number of Australian commercial premises now installing alternative sources of energy such as solar panels. The increase has come to 400% in the last 3 years.
Well, we've mentioned that Australia is way ahead of the game as far as individuals and homeowners putting solar on their roofs.
Right.
And now this is being matched by the industrial and commercial sector.
That's right. And they have this big thing going on in Australia where they've got basically a system in which the Labour Party wants to have renewables and address climate change. The Liberal Party wants to have coal and stop talking about climate change.
That's sort of changing.
It is a little bit slowly. I mean, it was only a few years ago.
We've talked about it here.
Yep, only a few years ago that Tony Abbott was the prime minister, and he's still in Parliament, and he is adamantly against renewable energy. Okay, we are up to Tuesday, August 14th, and we have a picture of some wind turbines.
Another picture here. Looks like windmills to me.
Yeah, it's Inverse is the name of the publication.
It is inverse, yes it is. Renewable energy could effectively be free by 2030, says a UBS analyst.
A research analyst at Swiss investment bank UBS believes the cost of energy renewables could be so near zero by 2030 that it would, quote, it will effectively be free, end quote.
I don't believe that.
Well, I think they will be, actually.
Well, they talked about nuclear would be too cheap.
Yeah, but that's a different thing. Renewables could soon be less expensive than all other energy sources. I think
it's getting close to it now.
Yeah, they already are, really. If you look at Lazard's numbers, they were last year. That this is, quote, a great news for the planet, end quote. I think of this in terms of things like computer memory. Now, you know, you take a thumb drive. It's got
Moore's law.
Huh?
Moore's law.
Moore's law, which is there's actually an explanation from this in a law called Wright's law, which I've mentioned before. But that thumb drive, if it's got 32 gigabytes of RAM, that is approximately 250 billion bits, and that would have been in 1961 $250 billion.
$1 a bit.
$1 a bit. And these things, if you go to WordPress and sign up for a blog, you get a blog for free. And the memory that goes with that blog is 3 gigabytes.
Wow.
So, and you can just do this over and over and over again. They don't have a limit.
Yeah.
And so you can get 3 gigabytes of memory that is free. The 3 gigabytes would have cost about $25 billion in 1961. Well, what's happening with energy? What happened with memory was that they saw a way to benefit themselves financially from giving the memory away. What this guy is suggesting is that somebody will see a way of giving away the energy. And I think I can see how that would work. You lease to a house a battery, you charge them a monthly fee, you charge them a connect fee. That's not for the energy, it's just for the equipment and the connection. And whatever they produce at their solar panels goes on the grid.
It's yours.
And whatever you need, you take. And that means that some people who are paying for energy, such as big businesses, are going to be well, they're going to have their connect fees and they're going to have their leasing fees. And the connect fee, the connect fee, if they did it the way that the utilities do with the transmission lines, they would say, okay, your connect fee is this because that's the greatest amount of electricity used at any time last month. And the more electricity you use at one time, the higher your bill will be. But the energy itself is free.
Well, as far as individuals are concerned, it's coming up very quickly. You will not be able to afford not to have solar panels if your house is so situated where they will work.
And if it isn't, you can get the solar panels off-site.
From your neighbor or
from
something
your
like
neighbor,
that, whatever.
From whatever.
It's happening. It's going to be a big change.
Yep. Okay, our next item is from Clean Technica.
EIA. Data undermines Trump's love affair with coal and nuclear. Now, what's the EIA? You're going to tell us.
This is the Energy Information Administration, which is part of the U.S. Department of Energy, and its job is to provide the Congress and the people with the
energy information.
Energy information. Reports published over recent weeks by the EIA and the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission show that coal and nuclear continue their decline across the country. Meanwhile, installations of renewable energy continue to increase.
Well, quick takeaway here. Renewable energy sources in the U.S. now provide more electricity than nuclear power in over half the states across the country.
And for the country as a whole, as we were talking about.
And more electricity than coal in a third of the states. And it's happening, guys. You know, it's economics.
It's economics.
And reliability.
Economics and reliability, yes. The unreliable, intermittent power that comes from solar and wind is more reliable than gas, coal, and nuclear. And there's a really good reason for that. I mean, this is a complex thing. Maybe we should do a show about that. But a nuclear plant, for example, it just runs. Or it's down. There isn't a lot in between. And if you had a nuclear plant that was supplying 30 megawatts power to a local city that it supplied under contract with direct lines, and the rest of its power was being supplied to places that were far away, if the grid went down and the connection to that city was still going, the nuclear power plant would not be able to supply that power. Because it would not be, even if they could disconnect from the rest of the grid, they can't supply the power because they are making so much power that they can't get rid of it. And they've got to get rid of it or everything fries.
Bingo.
Yeah. Okay.
Pretty complicated.
Yeah, we've got a graph coming
up. A quick takeaway from this one here.
Oh, okay.
The renewable energy train has left the station.
Yeah, that's what Gina
Trying to reverse that situation with costly subsidies for environmentally polluting nuclear power and coal defies common sense.
Well, Trump defies common sense.
Oh, yeah.
You know. Okay.
We got this is a good graph. I'm going to put it up.
This is a graph I think is kind of confusing because each of those vertical bars is just 100%.
It is confusing. It took me a while to figure it out.
Yeah.
But you look at that. You analyze it. There's a lot of information.
There's a lot of information
in that
there.
graph.
I will admit that. Yes.
If you got the time, play with it.
Yeah.
It's worth it.
Okay. This is from Clean Technica. What have you got for
Of
title?
New power generation, how much is on the roof? A quarterly update for 2018 first quarter.
Over the past year, distributed generation, which is electricity produced locally from rooftop solar on houses and businesses, nearby community solar gardens and so forth, has provided an average of 18.5% of electric power that came from new capacity.
That's the future.
That's the future. And you'll notice, if you look at this graph, each of those vertical bars is 100% of itself, which is why they're all the same height.
Yeah.
The height of the thing is seen by that line that
yellow line,
jaggy up and down.
It's complicated.
It is. But if you look at the first bar on the right, if you look at the rightmost colored bar, and actually the one next to it, you'll see that the light blue, which is wind power, the red, which is the big solar, and the orange, which are the small solar, are overwhelmingly the majority of what's going in.
That's what's going on now.
Over 80% of all of the power capacity installed in the last 6 months has been renewable.
Yep.
What do you say about that? I mean, look at the left-handmost thing, and you'll see the black down at the bottom.
That's where we started.
That's where we started in 2016. Down at the bottom, 3% of that capacity, of the capacity of that particular quarter, which, by the way, has the lowest yellow line of any of the quarters, so it's the 3% of the smallest amount, is coal, and there's no other coal installed in the whole thing.
Yep.
Coal is out of business, basically.
Yep.
And natural gas, well, it's had a couple of good quarters, but you know, it looks like it's in decline. So I guess we should go on. We're up to Wednesday, August 15th, and we've got an item from Clean Technica.
Sunrun installs 91 megawatts in a mixed second quarter.
In its second quarter earnings report, U.S. residential solar company Sunrun confirmed itself as the country's leading solar installer for the quarter by installing a total of 91 megawatts of new capacity. This was Sunrun's best ever quarter, despite earnings that were well below expectations. 91 megawatts is a fair amount of power.
Significant.
Yeah.
Significant.
And, you know, okay, so if they're doing 91 per quarter, that would imply that they could be doing 360 per year. And 360 megawatts is a little more than half of what the capacity that Vermont Yankee was. I want to clarify that, because solar power's capacity...
Just about half.
Yeah, but solar power's capacity is only about a quarter of the generates only about a quarter of the electricity that nuclear does. So this is about an eighth of the, it will generate, I'm sorry, I'm getting this wrong. Nope, I'm getting it right. The amount of material of solar that they installed in a quarter would be about in a year would be about an eighth of the amount that the electricity would be about an eighth of the amount that would come from Vermont Yankee.
But it's just one company.
But it's just one company, and it means that in 8 years they could install solar power that would outproduce Vermont Yankee. But that's just 8 years, which means
only one
company could install enough solar power to outdo a nuclear power plant in less time than it would take a nuclear industry to install one plant.
Well, the 91 megawatts equates to 200,000 customers.
Yeah. Okay. Our next item is from Clean Technica.
Yeah, this is a good article, too.
It is. It's a nice article.
It's a very good article.
Yep.
Solar farms can become pollinator habitats and help save the bees. They should.
Yeah, absolutely. At the U.S. DOE's Argonne National Laboratory, which is just outside of Chicago, as I recall, researchers are investigating ways to reinvigorate pollinator habitats at solar farms. They hope their work can help rehabilitate pollinator populations that play a crucial role in national and global agricultural industries.
So this is symbiosis.
That's right.
Symbiosis?
Symbiosis is the way
Symbiosis, whatever.
Symbiosis is a cute word.
Reading into the article, apparently, the best thing to put in there is milkweed.
Oh, yeah.
And it attracts the bees, but it also is the only thing the monarch butterflies eat.
The larvae,
at least during part of their
during
life
their
cycle.
Larval stage, and
they're beautiful.
And the milkweed is
and they're
in trouble.
disappearing.
Yeah, because of milkweed disappearing. The milkweed is disappearing apparently because of Monsanto's Roundup and other herbicides of that type that destroy broadleafed plants. And
yes.
So this is a byproduct. The fact that our bee populations are low is a byproduct of GMOs
corn.
Yeah, they've developed the GMOs for corn. And you go out into a cornfield and you look at what's actually there, and it's basically
it's a desert.
It's a desert. It's worse than a desert.
Nothing there but corn.
There's nothing there but corn. The only thing that can grow there is things that are not bothered by the herbicide and insects that can survive on that. And corn doesn't require pollinating insects. The pollen in corn is distributed by wind.
Yeah, right.
So, you know, we've got to deal with this, or we're going to be in trouble, because if we run out of bees, our agriculture's
dead.
Yeah, aside from
as
corn.
we know it now.
Yeah, as we know it now, for sure. Okay.
Well, this is very interesting, and Illinois, for example, has just recently passed a pollinator-friendly solar energy bill.
Yeah.
You're putting up solar, you've got to put these plants in there.
Yes.
Which makes sense. It makes a lot of sense.
There's been a lot of work in the last 2 years, 3 years about agriculture that can be done under solar panels. We've seen pictures of
We've talked about it here on the show.
Yeah, we've seen pictures of people raising hay under solar panels using standard agricultural equipment so that the trucks drive under the solar panels.
Now, that's a little bit extreme. But,
it's a little bit extreme. I wonder about how much that'll cost. Okay, should we move on? We've got one more item.
We've got our last item here.
Yep. This is from Clean Technica.
Caribbean nations partner with global superstars and corporate giants for $1 billion climate accelerator.
A coalition of 26 Caribbean nations, over 40 private sector giants, 8-time Olympic gold medal winner, I don't know how to pronounce the name, Usain Bolt.
I would imagine it's
Usain Bolt.
Yeah.
And global music superstar Sean Paul intend to make the Caribbean region the world's first climate-smart zone.
Interesting.
They're putting $1 billion into this.
I read about this article, and it's all of the Caribbean nations except the U.S.
Including Cuba?
Yeah.
Including Cuba.
Puerto Rico is not included.
Because
U.S. Virgin Islands are included.
Oh, okay.
But all the rest of them are all...
Well, Puerto Rico, you know, I wonder, because I suspect that the President of the United States was elected at a time when he didn't know that Puerto Rico was that part of the United States. So maybe it doesn't count.
I think you're probably right.
Anyway, yeah, and one of the one of the countries that is going to take big advantage of this, I will predict, is China.
Probably.
Because the United States is not flexing its muscles and going into these opportunity zones, and so who does? Well, the biggest operator in the world outside of the United States is China, and China is pulling ahead of us in a bunch of ways. They can make a lot of headway. You know, they've already got military agreements in that region.
Well, let's mention what they mean by a climate-smart zone.
Yeah.
It includes the implementation of solutions for resilience, renewable energy, development of sustainable cities, oceans, and transportation, a vision of a Caribbean which is greener, stronger, and more resilient than ever before.
Yep.
And somebody's going to have to provide the expertise.
And the solar panels.
And the solar panels, and wind, and whatever else.
Yeah, and if you happen to be the person who is supplying the expertise, and you happen to be, well, from a country that has sold solar panels, would you suggest your own country's solar panels?
Duh.
Would you? The second largest manufacturer in the of wind turbines in the world is a company called Goldwind.
Yes.
That's in China.
Yep.
Do you suppose people would recommend that? Well, what about this one? Maybe BYD would like to sell its batteries in the Caribbean.
They might.
They might. The Chinese are perfectly set up to basically take over the world energy market for one reason, and that is because the United States isn't willing to put its toe in the water.
Bingo. You're right.
Oh, well, okay, I'm going to say have a perfectly lovely week to everybody.
I'm going to say the same thing without saying it.
Come back next time.
Yo, come back now, you hear?